take time off the clock. You got to feel that as a defensive player. So what's the most important thing? The football. Key the freaking football. Key the freaking football.
Resilience is exactly what the Owls need after they fall short, 4 points short in their loss against USF.
Costly mistakes by the defense late in the game spoiled the Owls' postseason dreams and is adding to the team's frustration.
I'm Sam Covone reporting live outside of Edbrick Olson Hall. Coming up a little later, I will explain why the Owls' dreams of a bowl game were really just premature in 2023.
And I'm Hayden Bandel live at the studio set. The American has the most undefeated teams in conference play. Later in the show, find out who and just how many teams are 6-0 in AAC play. Inside the Nest is live and it starts right now.
Hello and welcome to Inside the Nest. I'm Meg Doyle and he's Jake Gabel.
The Owls went down to South Florida needing a win to keep their bowl game hopes alive, but the Bulls had the same goal in mind.
It was a hot day in South Florida with the Owls taking on the USF Bulls to get their second conference win. USF gets off to a fast start when QB Byron Brown passes 45 yards to Temple's 25. Only 2 minutes into the game, Brown is now looking for the touchdown pass, but nobody is there, so he gets the job done himself. The Owls are unable to respond, so QB E.J. Warner punts for Temple. We haven't seen that this season, but it puts USF deep. The Bulls aren't fooled for long, and Brown sends a 32-yard rocket all the way into the end zone, and this puts USF up by 10. Temple tries to respond, but Warner's pass gets intercepted by Amaris Brown. 17 unanswered points in the first quarter. The Owls fake the brotherly shove, and Darvon Hubbard breaks out with a 24-yard game. This sets Warner up perfectly for a beautiful 16-yard touchdown pass right to Jordan Smith. The Owls are back in it now. Brown now with a big throw, followed by an even bigger interception by Tywan Francis, his second pick of the year. Temple is down by 10 going into the half.
Late in the third quarter, Warner's pass is picked off at the line of scrimmage by defensive end Tramel Logan, his first interception in 4 years of college football, and takes it to the house. 27-10 USF. 3 plays later, Warner throws his third interception of the game. After the Owls defense forces a punt, fourth quarter, Warner with all day in the pocket finds Zay Baines in the end zone. 27-17 now. Warner, throwing under pressure, connects to Dante Wright, who's going to do the rest to get into the end zone. The Owls never get another chance. USF holds the ball for over 7 minutes on the last drive, in part thanks to some Temple defensive penalties. Your final score, 27-23. The 17 points to open the first quarter was too much for the Owls to overcome. Warner had one of his rougher performances of the season, completing just over half of his passes and throwing for 3 interceptions. For USF, Byron Brown threw for 316 yards, and 169 of those yards went Sean Atkins' way on 9 receptions. Still, after the game, the talk was all about the defensive issues in the final few minutes that kept USF on the field.
Can't win with 4 turnovers, but ironically, we put ourselves in a position to have a chance to win that ball game, and just the lack of discipline is the thing that's real tough pills. Just jumping on sides and, late hitting the quarterback, just stuff you can't do. The heat's out there for everybody. I mean, we can sit there and talk about the heat. The heat wasn't the issue. It's hot for everybody out there. If we sit there and let the elements, control the way we play, then we're not a locked-in football team. We knew it was going to be hot. I think the most disciplined football team won today.
Temple stands alone, but unfortunately not in a good place. This loss against USF gives Temple the longest road losing streak in all of the FBS. The Owls' last road win was in 2021 against Akron. This marks 13 straight road losses for the Owls. This might make you reminisce a bit, because it is the second time in program history Temple had 13-plus road FBS losses. The first was from 2003 to 2007 when Temple had 25 straight road losses. I mean, that itself is a little bit of a scary thought. But Jake, I want to hear what you think about this game because it was obviously a self-inflicted loss. Yeah, and talking about self-inflicted, the point I really want to get into is the turnovers for Temple. 4 on the day, 3 coming from interceptions thrown by E.J. Warner. Temple has lost the turnover battle in every game but 2 this season. In the 55-0 loss to SMU, both teams had 1 turnover each, and the only time Temple won the turnover battle, week 1 against Akron. Warner has to be better at protecting the football. He has 10 interceptions on the season, tied for 7th in the country for most interceptions thrown. Perhaps a reason for this is how many pass attempts Warner has been throwing a game, second most in the entire country, attempting about 44 passes a game. You know, it's funny, I feel like normally we're talking about how the offense played well and how the defense was lacking, but this time it's completely in reverse. I mean, it was an outstanding performance by the Temple defense. They really kept Temple in that game. They held the Bulls to no offensive points in the entire second half. They were also setting season highs with 6 sacks and 13 tackles for loss. Now, Jordan McGee, he took a big hit in that first quarter, but in that first quarter alone, he had 7 total tackles. I mean, we're talking about a player who's been playing consistently well this season. So that was a big loss, but that left room for others to step up. I mean, Yavonde Rigby led with 16 tackles, and Alex Odom had a career-high 12 tackles. So all around, it was a pretty impressive performance from the defense. Yeah, and we talked about those bad history marks for Temple with the road woes and the longest losing streak in the FBS on the road, but it's time for some good history for the Owls. David Martin Robinson is the one providing that history. He's just the 3rd Temple tight end to record over 1,000 receiving yards in his career. He passed that mark in the loss to USF, where he had 7 receptions for 102 yards. Another tight end that's been making some good waves as well, Jordan Smith, continues to produce. He caught his 4th reception touchdown of the season in that game. Jordan Smith, not the guy that I'd expect to be at the top of that reception touchdown mark, but the tight ends have been producing for Temple. They absolutely were. That is all the time we have for our game discussion. We're going to send it over to Sam Covone, who is live at Edberg Olson. Hey, Sam.
Hey, guys. For the 3rd straight year, Temple is ineligible for a bowl game. This comes as quite the shock to many who thought that this team would have the potential to win at least 6 games by the end of the season. Although, as it turns out, the Owls still have a way to go before being bowl ready.
Hopes of a bowl game traveled down to South Florida with the Owls this past weekend. But those hopes quickly disappeared after another road loss, this time to USF.
I believe Temple deserves to be in bowl games, and I think our players do as well.
That was Standry in August. Now in November, it's become easier to see how far from bowl ready this team really is.
Stop playing me, man.
To become bowl game eligible, a college team needs to win 6 games. Temple started the weekend 3 games shy with 3 games to go, and then falling behind quickly to the Bulls ended any such possibility.
Yeah, we took it pretty hard in the locker room, and it's really hard to swallow when a lot of it is self-induced. That's the reality of it. When it's self-induced, you take it a lot harder.
Temple has not appeared in a bowl game since the 2019 Military Bowl. The Owls have also not won a bowl game since 2017, where they defeated FIU 28-3.
Now the Owls will focus on their final 2 games. One more win, and they will better last season's 3-win total. But a possible bowl game will have to wait at least 1 more year.
Drayton says that despite not being bowl eligible, the Owls will play these last 2 games with the Temple tough mindset. That's all I have for now. Reporting from Edberg-Olsen, Meg and Jake, back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Sam. In just a 4-point loss, every play matters and can be the difference maker.
As always, we selected some plays that stood out to us from the game.
I'm going to start off, and we're going to get a very unique one. Before we play it at all, we're going to set the scene right here. It's a 4th and 9 on the USF 42. So Temple, if they're going to kick a field goal, that's going to be a 59-yard field goal. That's not going to go in. So you have the option to punt or go for it. It looks like Temple's going to go for it, but as you saw in the highlights, that's not the case. You can play it here. E.J. Warner just a step back than he normally is. He's normally right next to that running back. He boots it and shows off his leg, and it goes pretty far to the 15. You can see him just kind of show off the leg, get his punting ability in there, and it keeps the defense off guard. They had no one there back to return the punt.
For my play, I have the penalty that possibly cost Temple the game. We're going to go ahead and play it right here. You see Byron Brown is looking for a pass. He's not finding it, so he's running. Go ahead and stop it. Right here, you see he clearly stepped out of bounds, but Zamir Cobbs came in with that late hit, and this ultimately put Temple back. I mean, they got the 15-yard penalty. We can go ahead and play it through. They got the 15-yard penalty, and Temple lost a scoring opportunity. We're going to watch it back one more time. You see his foot clearly steps out of bounds, but this is just when Temple needs to lock in and focus on the ball, and that is what they lacked in this play right here.
Yeah, there's really no excuse for hitting that late.
Absolutely not, but that brings us to our first break of the day. On the other side, we'll be hearing from Coach Stan Drayton once again about his frustrations with the latest road loss.
Stay tuned. Inside the Nest will be right back. Welcome back. As always, head coach Stan Drayton takes the desk for his weekly press conference to reflect on all the good, the bad, and sometimes the ugly of the past game.
Coach talks about that Temple tough mentality and the impressive efforts from the defense.
From the heart, I mean, I really do believe that, I'm coaching one of the toughest, most resilient football teams I've ever been around. In the sense of never giving up, not quitting, overcoming so much that goes on that is obvious on the football field and some things that are not so obvious within the building. But, what's troubling is that, we play well in spurts, and then there's times where we play god-awful in spurts. We just got to find a way. We haven't been able to put 60 minutes of good football, complimentary football together, and that part of it is frustrating. They kept us in the game. I mean, we were having some issues. I mean, again, we had the turnover show up on offense. Our quarterback was off at times, and we had some drop footballs, and to put our defense back on the field at times. So, yeah, I think they did a good job of just staying the course, staying confident, not getting emotional, and I thought they played well all the way up until that last drive, man. All the way up until that last drive. I wish I could get that one back. That's a tough one to swallow, but yeah, I mean, there's something that we will build off of.
That last drive of the game for the Owls is certainly one Drayton and the defense wishes that they could take back, but the defense actually kept them in that game for the most part. Going into this one, we expected the offenses to really be the stars that shone in that game, but it was the defenses that were really picking up in that game. Temple played really good against that USF offense that had come in doing really good things. And Drayton also talked about resiliency on and off the field, and that things that go on that are not so obvious in the locker room and off the field. Just wondering what is happening behind closed doors.
It definitely does make you wonder, and that goes to show that there's always more going on than you even know. But I want to talk about something Stan says pretty often, and we just heard him say it. The Owls need to find a way to play a full 60 minutes. I feel like week after week, we've been hearing him say that, whether it's on the offensive end or the defensive end, they cannot play a full 4-quarter football game. However, the defense did keep the game alive for Temple in this game. I mean, especially with the offense's 4 turnovers. The defense was having to get back out there quick, but they had great stamina. They were able to stop that ball and get it back to the offense, so we got to give them credit there.
Yeah, but now it's time for part 2 of Drayton's presser, unforced errors. Earlier, Drayton praised his defense, but he also showed some frustration about this group with its issues late in the game.
It's hard to find an excuse for that. It really is. So, no, we just got to be better. Situationally, we got to be alert, aware. They were slowing their offense down to take time off the clock. You got to feel that as a defensive player. You know, so what's the most important thing? The football. Key the freaking football. Key the freaking football. Your eyes are on the football. It's not about a hard count. You should know we're going to get hard counted. You should know they're trying to keep our offense off the football field, and I think that needs to be better articulated from our coaches maybe on the sideline, you know, but it has to be better received by our football players who actually got to go do it. Yeah, we took it pretty hard in the locker room, you know, and it's really hard to swallow when a lot of it is self-induced. That's the reality of it. You know, when it's self-induced, you take it a lot harder. If you sit there and if you had the ability to say that, hey, we were just outmatched by that opponent. You know, they were just better than us. You know, and no discredit to South Florida at all. You know, but that, in our mind, was not the case. You know, it was just some self-inflicted things that we could not overcome, and so that makes it really, really tough. You know, but no, we're not going to quit playing hard football.
All right, Jake, say it with me.
Key the freaking football!
Oh my gosh, how many times have we heard him say that so far today? I mean, those 2 big penalties at the end of the game, that really hurt Temple. They had a shot at winning it, but those last penalties put them back. They could not get the ball back to score. The defense definitely lost some focus at the end there, and it all goes back to discipline. They just need to be more disciplined, especially in high-stress situations like that. You can't be making those mistakes, but I will give them credit for not letting USF score in a 7-minute drive.
Yeah, and then Stan was talking about, you know, the self-inflicted wounds. If those flip around, maybe Temple wins that game. I'm going to take a positive twist on that because earlier in the season, even if Temple did fix their self-inflicted wounds, they weren't probably winning those games. But now that Temple is in a 4-point ball game, you're so close. If you just fix those simple mistakes that really don't need to happen, then Temple's in a prime position to win those games.
I completely agree with you. They are definitely in a better place now.
But we're up on our second break of the day. On the other side, we will hear from some Owls who spoke earlier today about what's coming up next.
That just happens to be UAB. Player talk and behind enemy lines. Don't go anywhere. ITN will be back in just 90 seconds. Welcome back. Just a few moments ago, a few Temple players spoke and answered questions from the media.
ITN's own Sam Covone is live at the practice facility and was there. Hey, Sam.
Hi, hey guys. At today's press conference, Martin Robinson and McMurray spoke about their mindsets going into these last 2 games, how much it means to them, and this past weekend's game. This is what they had to say.
It definitely was rough. Because I definitely feel like we had the momentum. I definitely feel like we got the ball back. We might have changed the outcome. But, you know, like I said, you can only control the things that we can control. And you still trust everyone on the team. You know, everyone's in this together. So it was unfortunate, but we got to move on. I want to go out with a win for me and my teammates. You know, I've been thinking about it a lot more. Definitely going to be an emotional 2 weeks because it's been a long ride here. But I just want to win with my teammates, and I just want to enjoy it and really just soak in every moment with everyone that I have here at Temple.
On that last drive, I feel like we did a pretty good job throughout the whole game, except for, I guess, the first 17 points in the first quarter. But for the rest of the game, I feel like we did a good job understanding that they're a Temple team, adjusting to all the things that they were throwing at us. And I feel like on that last drive, we just got to do better, just focusing on what got us to that point.
Martin Robinson and McMurray both echoed about wanting to win for this Temple team. Martin Robinson, who is in his last year of eligibility and is having his first injury-free season, is trying to soak in every moment with his teammates, coaches, and staff. Ultimately, he will decide on his plans for after football and Temple. Right now, the Owls are just locked in on winning these last 2 games and trying to get better each and every week. Meg and Jake, back to you on the desk.
Thanks, Sam. It's time to preview Temple's next matchup, new to the conference, UAB. Let's roll the tape. UAB was outgained by Navy, with the midshipmen dominating in rushing with 269. Defense kept UAB in the game until it all went south in the 4th quarter. Navy scored 21 unanswered points to take the win 31-6 over the Blazers.
The Blazers were unable to score a touchdown the entire day. Quarterback Jacob Zeno threw 2 picks and was sacked 4 times. Meanwhile, Xavier Arline got most of his damage done on the ground for Navy. To go along with 1 passing touchdown, Arline rushed for 109 yards and a score as well. Fullback Alex Teska also added in 82 rushing yards.
I mean, it's obvious both of these teams are coming off a tough loss. I want to start by talking about UAB's offense. They have a very strong offense. UAB offense is ranked 5th in the AAC compared to Temple, who's ranked 10th. So that just already goes to show the difference between offenses. Not only that, but UAB is definitely a passing team. They have around 290 passing yards per game. Temple has around just about 260, which is crazy to say UAB has more, because I feel like all we talk about is how Temple has such a strong passing game. However, UAB also has more of a run game. They have 1,453 rushing yards for the season, which is nowhere near Temple's. I mean, it is just night and day, that difference. But this is going to be a tough matchup, especially on the road.
Yeah, and this reminds me a lot of Temple's last game against USF, because both teams really like to throw the ball a lot. I know you talked about that as well, but they also struggle to run the ball. I mean, UAB can run the ball a little bit better than Temple can, but they are both pass-heavy teams, and USF did throw for over 300 yards against Temple, but only had 1 passing touchdown. So Temple's defense is doing a little bit better against that. And UAB only threw for 206 yards last game and 2 interceptions against Navy, the team that E.J. Warner had 4 touchdowns against and did really good against. So I think this is going to be a close one. And not to mention, this is a little bit of a revenge game for E.J. Warner. This has some bloodline stakes in there as well. His dad, Kurt Warner, took on the coach of UAB, Trent Dilfer, in the NFL. Niners and Dilfer beat Warner's Cardinals 37-31 back in 2007.
Needless to say, there's a lot riding on this game, but it's now time for us to give Temple some words of advice going into this UAB matchup.
4 tools, 2 anchors. Let's get started with our blueprint for success. Tool 1, protect the football. Temple coughed up 4 turnovers against USF, who in return only had 1 turnover. Turnovers are drive killers for the offense and drive igniters for the opposing offense. Temple cannot afford to be sloppy, especially playing on the road for the 2nd week in a row. Now, tool 2, force UAB to run the ball. The Owls' defense has been sneakily good against the run the past 2 weeks, which is surprising since it had been the unit's Achilles heel prior. UAB is a team that struggles to run the ball, and they love to throw. Take the ball out of Zeno's hands and make them beat you on the ground.
Speaking of run game, our tool number 3 is focusing on the Owls' run game. UAB defense struggles against the run. The Blazers' rush defense is ranked 13th in the AAC. If the Owls focus on the ground, it will set themselves up for big pass plays. And the final tool for today, the Owls need to keep their cool. 7 penalties in this last game is unacceptable, especially from the defense. Poorly timed penalties is what kept the Owls from potentially winning against USF. Temple needs to be more disciplined and focus on the ball and not let their emotions get the best of them. Jake and I have given our 2 cents on the Owls' first ever matchup with UAB, but now it's time to hear from someone whose job it is to know a little bit more about the Blazers than anyone else.
We got the chance to speak with UAB beat reporter Evan Dudley, who has been covering the Blazers since 2017.
For the longest time there, I guess you could call them a doormat of college football. They didn't have a whole lot of success. They had one bowl appearance, I think 2 bowl eligible seasons in the 25 years or so before they hired Bill Clark in 2014. He immediately gets them to 6-6, and then they shut down the program for 2 years. They reinstated it 6 months after they first shut it down, and so he was able to kind of bring the team back together, recruit, go through practices for at least a year. They come back in 2017. They're picked to finish last in the nation. They finished, I believe, 8-5 on the season. They go to a bowl game. They didn't win it, but the next year they win their conference for the first time ever, and they've been on a roll ever since.
This is head coach Trent Dilfer's first year at UAB and coaching college football in general. Can you introduce us to his coaching style?
He's a pretty positive guy. He's a guy that's going to, try to look at the silver lining, or not really a silver lining, but, look at the positives, anything, negative. As we see UAB's record this year, it's not very well, but, in his eyes, he sees this team has continued to improve, may it be individually, but it hasn't really produced on the field just yet. More glaringly, this last game where they lost to Navy 31-6 in a game that they very much should have won. They really kind of changed their offensive philosophy, tried to run a lot more, where they could have probably easily made it a track meet and ran away with the game, but because their defense probably played their best game of the year against Navy. But after your offense has only laid 2 field goals through 3 quarters, your defense is going to be pretty tired at that point. So there's been a lot of up and downs throughout this year, but I think ultimately he's learning, and I think that's a lot of what Trent Dilfer is doing this year. He's learning how to become a college head coach. He was very successful on the high school level.
So every show we pick our own score prediction for the game. Now we are wondering what your score prediction is for this game. Who you think is going to win?
It is Monday morning, or afternoon, excuse me. So it's going to be hard to really zero in a score right now. But if I had anything, given that UAB is at home, I would give them maybe a 42-41 at this point. Let's just go 42-41. I think it'll be high scoring. Both offenses have capability. It just really comes to who gets a defensive stop. And so I'm just going to give UAB the edge because they are at home this week.
Evan took UAB to win a tight shootout, but on our desk we have some disagreement. Now before we get into our predictions, let's take a look at our records. Meg took a chance on Temple last week, and the chance that the rest of us were not willing to take. That sends Meg to the bottom of the leaderboard at 7-3. Hayden and myself sit at the top, tied at 9-1, but I've got big news. One of us is going to take an L this week. Hayden and I are tied at the top, but not for long. We disagree coming into this weekend. I have Temple winning 30-27. The Owls defense has impressed me the past 2 weeks, allowing just 4 offensive touchdowns the past 2 games combined. UAB also just got dismantled by a Navy team that the Owls just handily defeated. This game is on the road, so I expect it to be close. We all know Temple's road struggles, but the Owls seem to be playing much better after the bye week. Hayden, we've predicted the same outcome every week so far until now. What's got your mind going UAB's way?
All right, Jake. Well, where I'm disagreeing with you is when it comes down to quarterback play in this matchup, and I'm going to give UAB the advantage. In his first season as a full starter, Jacob Zeno has thrown for over 2,500 yards. Not only is that good for 3rd in the AAC, on top of that, he has completed 74% of his passes. That is 3rd in the nation. His head coach, as you mentioned earlier, Trent Dilfer, a former Super Bowl winning quarterback, I think that's a lot of the reason that he's had a lot of success this season. I'm taking UAB 36-28. Now that we disagree, Sam, it's your turn.
Well, it's certainly going to be another nail-biting close game. But ultimately, I see Temple extending their road game losing streak and being defeated by the Blazers 31-24. This UAB team is getting down the field and gaining a lot more yards per game than Temple is. With these factors at play and it being a road game, I just don't see the Owls taking the win. Meg, who are you taking?
Well, it's clear that the crew is going to be split this week because I'm with you, Jake. I have Temple breaking its road game losing streak and taking the win over UAB 27-24. The Owls have had a late progression this season, with the last 2 games finally seeing some improvement. The road losing streak has to end at some point. Why not this weekend?
Meg, I hope we're right on this one. However, we're not exactly done with score predictions yet.
You guys get a 2-for-1 special. We will be on fall break next week, but the football team still has one last conference game to play against Memphis. So let's look ahead to their final game of the season versus the Tigers on Black Friday, the 24th. I'll get us started right away, and this time, unfortunately, I don't have as much hope for this Memphis game and have the Tigers winning 48-20. I see this being a high-scoring game for the Tigers as they have scored 20 or more points in 24 consecutive games, which is the longest active streak in the nation. Memphis is a force to be reckoned with this season, which makes it a very tough matchup for Temple. Sam, your turn.
Meg, I agree with you yet again. This Memphis team has been almost unstoppable this season. The Tigers have scored at least 40 points in each of their last 4 games, something that only Temple has done once this season. I'm saying Memphis will beat Temple 52-20. Hayden, you're up. Who's it going to be?
All right, Meg, you mentioned that we are getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but this is going to be a must-win game for the Tigers if they are going to have any shot at playing in the AAC championship. They stand at 5-1 in AAC play. They have a big game this weekend against SMU at home. If they win that, they still need to defeat Temple to get to that championship game. I think it's going to be really hard to see the Owls stopping a Tigers team that is in a must-win situation. I'm taking Memphis 45-28. Jake, who you got?
I agree with all of you guys. I have Memphis winning 45-24, really with the same reasons that all of you guys do. An offense averaging 39 points per game is just too much for the Owls to overcome. We're heading up on our second break of the day. 2 very exciting games coming up for Temple in this one, but now it's time for another break.
Stay tuned. ITN will be back in just 90 seconds. Welcome back. We've been answering questions all season long, but with 2 games to go and the Temple's bowl game dreams officially over, the questions get a little tougher to answer.
The pocket is collapsing and we're under pressure. 2-minute drill, roll that clock.
All right, let's get started right away. This is the 3rd conference matchup for the Owls this season where they're playing a team for the first time. Is this a factor in their lack of success?
I do think it has a factor on this game because it's a lot harder to scout an opponent you've never played before. With teams that you've played in conference play before, it helps you out. And against the previous 2 teams they've never played before this season, UTSA and North Texas, they didn't win those games.
I see where you're coming from, but I disagree. There is plenty of tape on UAB and the other teams prior that they played. They have all week to look at their strengths and weaknesses, so I don't think it's a factor.
All right, but these last 2 games for Temple, now that they're not bowl eligible, what do they mean for the Owls?
Although they're not bowl eligible, they are still very important games. A UAB win would mean that it ends a 13-game road losing streak, which would be huge. Not only that, but finishing the season with 5 wins instead of 3 sets the team up for a lot of success for the next season.
Yeah, those 5 wins are important not only for the team, but for incoming recruits. It's a lot more attractive to see a 5-win team that's on the come up than a 3-win team that is in the same spot that they were last year.
All right, final question. Do you expect E.J. Warner to enter that transfer portal?
I kind of think he might test the waters. I don't think he might leave the team, but I think he should see what other teams are thinking, maybe a Power 5 school. I will say, however, that offensive coordinator Danny Langsdorf is a big reason he came to Temple. If Langsdorf is still here at Temple, I think Warner most likely stays with them.
See, I don't really think he is. I mean, he's just starting to get comfortable being in that QB1 position. Him and that offensive line has had a pretty great season regardless of all the losses. And he is just built smaller than your average quarterback. So I think if he goes elsewhere, he's just going to be a small fish in a big pond.
Well, the time is up, which means we have one last break for today. When we come back, it will be the week's top AAC catch-up.
Stay tuned. ITN will be right back.
Welcome back. As we approach the end of the show, there's only one thing left to talk about.
That is the AAC, of course. ITN's Hayden Bandel is live at the studio set, ready to give us the weekly rundown. Hey, Hayden.
Hey, Meg. Before we get to all the undefeated teams, let's talk about a program that got its first conference win. ECU went on the road to beat FAU 22-7. Andrew Conrad drilled 5 field goals, all from 40-plus yards out, and accounted for 16 of ECU's 22 total points. SMU rolled past North Texas. The Mustangs are improved to 6-0 in conference play for the first time since 1982. Your final score, 45-21. UTSA also remained perfect in conference play, topping Rice 34-14. The Roadrunners have now won 21 of their last 22 conference games between the CUSA and the American. And the final of the 3 undefeated teams is Tulane. The Green Wave squeaked past Tulsa to pick up their 4th consecutive one-score win. The American is the only conference to have 3 undefeated teams in conference play. Then there is Memphis, who won its 4th one-possession game of the season, topping Charlotte this week in overtime.
Well, welcome to the desk, Hayden. Tell us a little bit more about your standout game.
Yeah, so Charlotte was up by 10 points with under 8 minutes to go, but then you see this touchdown that gets Memphis within 3 points. Blake Watson, we'll hear his name one more time, but before that, after a 3-and-out is forced by Memphis' defense with under a minute, Tanner Gillis, who missed from 43 yards earlier in the quarter, connects on this 41-yard attempt to send it to overtime. Speaking of missed field goals in overtime, a miss from Charlotte's kicker, but it honestly would not have even made a difference. Here he is again. Blake Watson finds the back of the end zone for his 3rd score and a Memphis win. The 3 touchdowns for Watson is the 3rd time that he's done it in his career, 2nd time this season. The ODU transfer has been a stud for Memphis, to say the least, this year.
I definitely see why you chose that as your standout game. But my next question, out of all the conferences, where do you think the AAC falls in ranking?
I think I like the American right at 6. Obviously, we always talk about the Power 5 school, but the American likes to call themselves the Power 6 in football, especially with Tulane and UTSA and other teams such as with Charlotte and Memphis. They really show that they can compete with Power 5 schools. But when we get lower down the list, there is a significant drop in talent compared to those Power 5 schools, but they are better than other conferences such as the Sun Belt that has teams like James Madison and the MAC as well.
Well, Hayden, thank you for coming on, but unfortunately, that's all we have for today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to keep up with us on all socials at Al Sports Update.
For all of our show producers, Chloe Gessing and Jacob Smedley and the whole ITN crew, have a safe fall break, and we'll see you 2 weeks from now.